Hello, 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 everyone. Hey, ladies, what's going on?
Good morning.
Hello, good
Good
morning.
morning.
Good morning, good morning. I am so excited about this episode, and I'm glad to see y'all beautiful, smiling faces. We just had a conversation on last night with the Hearts of Men. So happy to see you guys here again this morning. And again, I am excited about this conversation. How is everybody doing?
I'm doing great. Great. It's the
Doing
weekend,
great.
right?
Yes. 3 day weekend
Likewise.
coming.
Doing great. Would you say? I didn't hear you, Miss Adrian. What you say?
3 day weekend for some of us who get that federal holiday. So I'm always looking forward to these weekends.
Okay.
I'm looking forward
Yes.
to being with you ladies as well.
Good, good, good. And we don't want to neglect to make sure that we mention the chat. Hello, ladies. Thank you for your support. Share, share, share. If you haven't shared this with anyone yet, I think you're going to enjoy the conversation, and we are excited to share all that we're learning together with you. So, ladies, are y'all ready?
Yes.
So ready or not, it's about to happen, huh? We want to make sure that we share that these are our perspectives, and we're sharing them, and we want you to know that hope that you can be open to hearing what we're saying or considering what's being said, and that you may find that what we're sharing with you is valuable. So we thank you, anyone who was joining for the first time or watching and may not want to comment. Please comment. We are a friendly community, and we are thankful that you're here, and invite you to continue to come back. We're so thankful for you guys listening in and giving us a few moments of your time this morning. So this morning we're talking about parenting, right? From a adult parenting, but we're going to go down a timeline. So I wanted to ask the ladies, one thought that I had when I woke up this morning is, when you think about being an ambassador, what are your thoughts? What does an ambassador do?
An ambassador typically represents the interest of a country when they are traveling. It can be domestically, but mostly internationally is where an ambassador plays a critical role for the interest of those two countries.
Okay.
Yeah, I think when I think of ambassador, whether it's for a position like that or for a brand or anything like that, you're kind of representing what that is. You're like a walking billboard for whatever that entity is. So when they see you, you represent whatever that is, even without, definition or whatever. If they think of the title and they look at you, they're supposed to kind of get some kind of idea of what they're buying into.
That's good. I like that. When
Mhm.
they look at you, they should be able to get an ideal. I like that.
My answer would be similar. I would think that an ambassador would be a person who is tapped on the shoulder to represent either a person or organization. And as you speak to those of noble people, like the people you're going to speak as you're being a representative, they should get an idea again of the person that you represent, the organization that you represent, and from that introduction or from your representation, they should have either a good feeling or not so good feeling about the personal organization.
Okay. I love all of those responses, and it made me think about, outside of what I had already had written down, what Dr. Lisa was saying, that when a person looks at you, not saying that we're going to judge by that outward appearance, right? But that when I'm thinking, look at, I'm thinking about how you represent yourself, how you speak, how you carry yourself, how you respond. Those are some of the things that I'm thinking about, right? When I think about ambassador, I want to read something to you. Okay, give me just a second. Let me see. So, as I was thinking about ambassador, and this is something that just came to me this morning, right? And I had to incorporate it, even though because I know it was something that the Holy Spirit was teaching me in this moment. So an ambassador. So ambassador is he's a representation, right? And so they represent the higher authority. So if you think about an ambassador for a country and you think about an ambassador for Christ, while ambassador for Christ represents God's kingdom. So if you're representing God's kingdom, you have to know about his kingdom and the rules and the establishment, right? The ambassador is expected to embody the values and the principles of that authority. Okay. So the ambassador also is in communications, right? So ambassador must effectively communicate their country's policies and values, just as an ambassador for Christ shares a message of the gospel and God's love. Both require clear and persuasive communication skills. Okay. And then building relationship. That's what an ambassador does as well. Establishes and maintains relationships. That's crucial. So a country's ambassador builds connections with foreign officials and communities, while ambassador for Christ builds relationships and shares faith, promotes understanding, and fosters community. Community is so important, and that's something that we always talk about in our community, us learning how to be a community. Conflict resolution. Ambassadors for Christ promote reconciliation and healing among individuals and communities. An advocate. So ambassadors for Christ advocate for the values of the kingdom and justice and mercy and love and a cultural engagement as well. So those are some of the things that I jotted down. Do you guys have any comments or questions about anything that I just read?
Nope.
Okay. All right. So now I want to go into us talking about the schoolmaster, right? So if you go into Galatians 3, 24 and 25, there is a scripture there, right? And this is something I've been for the past year or so just been, thinking into and developing and learning more of. Okay. And I want to read that particular scripture. Galatians 3, 24 and 25. And if you don't mind, if we have any comments, please share them, okay? Wherefore the law was our schoolmaster to bring us unto Christ. We're still talking about being mentors and advisors for our adult children, that we might be justified by faith. But after that faith is come, we are no longer under a schoolmaster, okay? And so when you hear the word schoolmaster, what do you think a schoolmaster is?
Well, I know the difference with in a private school and a public school. In public schools, we have principals, and in private schools, I've learned they're called schoolmasters, but their roles are essentially the same, just in different environments, if you will. Again, private school versus public school, but pretty much they both have the same role. They have the responsibility to make sure that the students are learning. They have to make sure that the environment is safe. They have to make sure the budget is there. And so it requires a lot from them as well, just the same as even when you gave the description for an ambassador, a schoolmaster has a lot of responsibility as well.
Yeah, I agree. I was thinking about kind of managing the body of people, whether students, you're managing the teachers, you're managing to make sure that they're following curriculum, that kind of thing. So they're just kind of the overall, making sure that everything flows correctly. And even in the form of discipline, if somebody gets in trouble, that's the head as far as the school, the building itself. So I agree.
When you first said, what do you think about schoolmaster? I'm so sorry, but the movie Matilda popped into my head. Do you remember that? I think her name was Hickenbotham or whatever.
I knew it was coming. I knew something was coming from
I can't help it, but personality will always break through. But yeah, that's what I thought about. And not only did Miss Hickenbotham even though she was mean, she not only wanted to make sure that the school ran efficiently, but that the children were on their best behavior. And she kind of ran it with a little bit of an iron fist. And They kind of would run away from her. But, sometimes that is important, when it comes to schoolmasters, that you have to keep sometimes a tight ship and make sure that everybody is doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing. And sometimes you can't deviate, like my personality, but, sometimes you can't deviate from that. So that's what I think of when I think of schoolmaster.
Okay. All right. Okay. So another question, as a parent, right? When I'm going to ask this question. When those who are parents, when you became a parent, what did you think about your raising up your children, or did you think about that at all?
I know I did, and I was like, what am I going to do? Like, I knew it was a different than just having this child that I was responsible for life. So it was scary. I was up for it. I wanted to do it, but I was like, how do you, because I'm kind of that personality that wants to have a schedule and rules and all these kind of things. So I was busy trying to, how am I going to roll this out? How am I going to do this to keep this child safe? It's just this protective thing went over me immediately on how can I make sure that this child gets through life completely. So that's why I think I struggle sometimes with letting go at one point. But yeah, it's like, okay, I'm in control of this ball right here. It has to stay in my arms. If it falls, I got to pick it up real quick. That's how I kind of thought about it. But my mind was all over the place with it.
Okay.
So for me, because I was a very young mom, I was actually still in school when I had my daughter. So for me, I did not have to figure it out by myself. I had my parents. I had 6 other siblings that was in the house. I had aunts, uncles. I really grew up in a community when it came to my daughter. Even my school got involved to make sure that I did not fall between the cracks, that I did not become another societal statistic. But even within that community, I did recognize that it was still my responsibility to take care of my daughter and for her well-being. And so I was just focused on being the best mom that I could be with the knowledge that I had, leaning in on my community when I needed to. And so, I just was like, okay, this is, I got 18 years to go to start, because a lot of people don't realize, hopefully I'm not jumping ahead, Lisa, that a lot of people say, oh, I can't wait till you turn 18. Why? You are a parent as long as you are breathing and as long as they are breathing. But I was just focusing on what will the next at least 18 years look like, and how can I give her a good, strong, firm foundation to help her, not just when she becomes an adult, but as she's just simply aging, to be able to make her own decisions as well. So it was a lot of work. And I just say to anybody, whether you're a teen mom or an adult, it's still a lot of work either way, but having a community does make a world of a difference.
I don't have any children, but just the thought of being a parent to me was always terrifying. Being responsible for another life, especially when you're very young. And I wasn't that young when I got married. I was in my late 20s. But just the thought of being responsible for someone else's life, I was like, oh, Lord, wait a minute now. I can barely get myself out the door on time. So I don't know if that's something that I would ever be able to do. So I always honor and have the utmost respect for parents, because I know that has got to be a great responsibility to be responsible for another human.
You're on mute.
I can remember becoming a parent, and I had these grand ideals, right? One of them was she's gonna be dressed so cute. She's gonna have some cutest outfits, or he gonna have the cutest outfits. I'm gonna make sure their hair is cute. I was a stay-at-home mom for most of my children's adult life. So I stayed at home with my children. And I'm so thankful that I had the opportunity to do that. There's so much that I learned in raising them up as well. So, but my thought when I first had my my first child was my daughter, and I was like, I'm going to, she's going to be so cute, and she's going to learn how to speak in 2 languages, and she's going to have know her ABC. These are my thoughts, right? Because I had all these grand ideals of how I was going to teach her, right? And so this is why I think it's so important, because when I was a young mother, I was married at 18. So I was a young mother. So I had my daughter young as well. And we were already in our life and in Kansas, in the military. So it was, all this stuff going on, right? And so when I had her, I was like, there was 7 of us growing up, and I was their surrogate mother, I guess. My siblings, they all call me, I'm not going to share the name, but they all, reach out to me still, and they had a name for me because I helped raise them. And so when I raised my daughter, I thought that was preparing me to do what I needed to do for her and my children. And these are the ideals that I thought, in the way that I thought I was supposed to raise them up, teach them, prepare them for school. And of course, we went to church. But I didn't have an idea of how I was supposed to teach her, what I was supposed to be putting in her, or even being an example for her. So those are some of the things that I thought about as I began to read about being a schoolmaster, right? And so some of the aspects of a schoolmaster is, as you guys, for guidance and for instructions, right? To set boundaries. So one of the ideals for a schoolmaster is that our children are under guardians, right? And that implies that we're teaching them boundaries and rules. And this is put in place to protect them, as they grow, and then they understand the rules and the boundaries and the guidelines that children, how their behavior should be, right? So as parents, one of the things that we have to do is we have to be involved. We have to set the appropriate limits and help the children learn what's right and what's wrong to prepare them for their future, because they need to be able to identify this is right, this is wrong, right? And also prepare them for independence, right? So there's a particular scripture in Galatians, I think it's 4:1 and 2. It says the heir grows to a point where there's no longer a need for the guardian, right? And so that has to be in our mind even as we have children. And I didn't think about it from that aspect, right? So this reflects the goal of us raising our children up, so they can eventually become independent and make their own wise choices. And so we gradually have to give our children responsibilities, teach them how to make decisions, and think critically. We have to have the conversations. I remember when I was younger, my mom, we were real young. She would sit us on the couch and she would say, okay, let me know, are you upset about something? Are you mad about something? Do you want to say something? Now, you're not going to get in trouble. You can say whatever, say whatever you want to say. You're right. She gave us this opportunity to do that, right? But I don't recall the helping us to understand, how to think critically. And I think that's an important aspect, even as our children are younger, and their understanding, they have a sense of comprehension that we can help them to identify making the right and wrong decisions and thinking about some of the things that they've done. And so the last thing that I'm going to mention in this is transitioning roles. Just as the role of a guardian changes when children mature, parents also transition from being authoritative figures to advisors as their children grow. And I know that's not always easy, right? Mm-hmm. So I want to ask this question. As parents with adult children and as an adult child, how do you think that the transition went for you with your children?
For me, it was 50-50. With my daughter, again, because recognizing having her at such a young age that I really had to lean in on what I already knew based on what I gained from my parents. But then I really had to also lean in on that community that I was talking about. And my daughter and I, we're only 13 years apart. I had my daughter at 13, and I'm not ashamed about it. So I don't have an issue sharing with that. As you was also saying early, and it might have been backstage, Lisa, is that, you know, when we reflect over our life, there are some things we would have loved to done different, right? But he didn't intervene. So if he did not intervene, that means we were equipped to deal with it. And that's what I did. And so it was a little difficult for me to let my daughter go out because my daughter is total opposite of me in that, you know, she's way more friendlier. And I had to teach her about, you know, being too friendly to, you know, people that she know or even strangers. But I had to trust in the fact that I taught her as best as I could. And I was trusting what I taught her was enough to at least get her started. And then as she began to, you know, progress in adulthood, that she would then also find her own community and find her own resources to help her also navigating while I'm in the background. My daughter always knew that she could call me at any time, but I knew she wouldn't because I did kind of smother her. So, you know, children, when they like, I can't wait to get out from up under my mama and my daddy, or, you know, whoever their caregiver was. So at first she did not lean into me. And it did bother me. It did hurt because I'm like, well, what did I do? And, you know, so I just had to be patient. And, you know, and again, I just had to trust that what I did know and what I taught her was enough to give her that guidance. So for me, it was a little difficult with my boys. Boys were so different. It was so much different with them. So I wasn't so concerned with them, you know, and you know, we've been taught that girls or women are a little more fragile. So we got to be a little more protective and, but she's doing well. They're doing well, you know, so, you know, I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, for me, and I love the different where we started as parents, right? So I was late to the party, so to speak. So I was in college when I had my daughter. So my mind was already set on what I was going to do in my future. And then I have this beautiful baby girl that's like, okay, well, you going with me. So when I became a mom, I was kind of, you know, worried about several things, like how am I going to continue with my education and also raise this child, which I wanted to do both. I didn't give up on either one of them. So she went to school with me. I took my stroller right into class in college and set her right there. But I was, to be transparent with you, when I became a mom to my daughter, my children are 9 years apart, I was stuck on how I had gone through life. I had gone to school, I went off to college. So when my daughter didn't follow the same path, I really struggled because I took responsibility for that. And I was like, I must have done something wrong. When she said she wasn't doing this or wasn't doing, I was like, wait a minute, this is what we do in this family. Because I was following what my parents did. They all went to college. They all did this. And I was stuck there for a long time. And I mean, it really did torment me because I felt like I had failed as a parent. So it took some time for me to realize that she still has her own mind. She's a bright young lady. Even as a child, we had conversations. We didn't do a lot of the goo goo gaga. And I wasn't one of the moms. They thought I was a little militant. I really wasn't, but I was very firm in how I raised her. So it wasn't like the cute little girl. She was cute, but it was like, she ain't that cute. But because my mom raised me that way. My mom didn't play. And I grew up around a lot of boys. So it wasn't rough, but it was like, this is what we do. So it wasn't a lot of coddling and things like that. So I didn't pick that up. And like Nodella said, my son, 9 years apart, I had learned a lot of those things. So it was an easier transition with him. And boys to me are a little different in the way you raise them. And his temperament is different. They're just different children. So yeah, I held on to my own beliefs of what you're supposed to do as a parent initially. And I had to learn to let go and realize that they're their own beings. And even if you teach them everything that you thought was correct, they're still going to go their own way. And it's okay. You haven't like destroyed them. They really are just living. You're on mute.
You're muted.
Sorry about that. As an adult child, my transition was, I can't say it was hard, but it was definitely delayed. It's 19 years between me and my last sibling. So my mother's transition into her, and she was much older when she had me. She was almost 40. So as she entered in her middle age years, and I, of course, being very, very young, we were really, really close, and we stayed very, very close. I think I was the only 16-year-old that considered their mother their best friend. So when I decided that I didn't even want to leave home. When I got proposed to, I was trying to convince them, like, let's just like find a house in the same neighborhood. I was like, no, you got to go away. So I was very, very, very glued to her. And even when I did move away, didn't even leave the state, but just on the other side of the state, she would travel every 2 weeks to come to my house. And I know my cousin probably thinks to myself, that was weird, but we were very, very, very close. So my transition wasn't hard. However, she was very opinionated in my choices, right? And so, foolish was a word that got tossed around a lot, and I was a little all over the place. But for me, I think the older I got, when I started to enter into my 30s and I lost her at 37, we got even closer. Like even when my friends would invite me on different things to celebrate, I was like, okay, me and my mom will be there. Like it was a no-brainer for me. That's just kind of how my life rolled then as an adult child. So I always had a position of reverence for her and respect. And so when she would tell me some of my decisions were foolish, she would tell me exactly what she thought, but she would always end it with, the Lord gave me you, and I was responsible for you. And in the decision you make, I'm giving you back to him, and I'm going to be okay with it. And that would kind of be the end of it. Now, I would take the words of wisdom. It didn't kind of really sway the decision I had already made up in my mind I was going to do. But however the chips fell, she was always there and she was always supportive, whether it was a failure or whether it was a success, my biggest cheerleader in everything that I did. So my transition was not really a difficult one. It was, still very, very close and very, very attached to her. You're on mute.
I'm going to comment. Then Miss Nodella, you said you had a few comments or questions?
Yes, and on my page, on my Facebook page, yes.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and just add my 2 cents to this as well. I remember my transition because my children were 7 years and 4 years apart. And I can confirm what everyone says, the boys are different. The boys are different. And I tried to incorporate some of the same things that I learned. I know that everything that I encountered being raised up was not always the right thing, but it was what my parents knew. And so the things that I gleaned from that were good, I tried to use those and take those with me as a parent. And one of the things that I did was try to make sure that my children knew that they can talk to me. And the other thing was ask them questions about the questions they're asking me, right? Because I want them to think. So that was one of the things that I did, not understanding it was a part of what we were supposed to do as parents to prepare them as adults. But in part, I knew. I did not know completely. And one of the things my daughter would do, I would tell them, you can tell me anything. And my daughter, she was the one who always wanted to be extra, right? She was the one who wanted to shock me with information. Like you said, we can tell you anything, and I was like, had to brace myself. So I begin to understand this pattern of behavior that she likes to do this to me.
You
And
asked
so I had to brace myself and like accept it, you know, because some of the stuff was like, that's too much information and I don't need to know it. Right.
I get it.
But that's, you know, what I think she found joy in watching me you know, suffer.
Look, I will say Nick D said my daughter's still like that. And I have to agree that she's 34 and I'm like, I don't need to know everything, but I love the fact that they're just that transparent and we're that close, but sometimes it could be a lot.
Yeah, I said anything and she took that to heart. Okay. You said I could tell you anything, and she would tell me what I said. I was like, okay. So I had to learn to have the conversations with her. But I wanted to say this before Miss Nodella comes in, and I know she said she had a few comments on this as well. I wanted to say this when we think about transitioning, right? So just as the role of a guardian changes when the child matures, parents also transition from being authoritative figures to advisors to their children, right? And this shift mirrors the transition from being under the guardian to living, you know, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. So there's freedom in grace, right? And so we're hoping that the things that we put in them as children, that they take with them when they leave, right? And so in preparing by fostering open communication and engaging our children and to help them to express some of their thoughts, maybe some of the things they have going on the inside, and be able to express them in a healthy way is a part of it, not holistically, but a part of it, because communication is such a big part of that. And helping them to think and helping them to have forethought is one of the things that is important as we, the parents, are the guardian or the schoolmasters, preparing them for their life in the kingdom as ambassadors. And so I'm going to stop there and I'm going to allow Miss Nodella to come in. She had a few comments. And if we can, we got a lot of stuff to go through, Miss Nodella. So, okay. All right.
I'm actually just going to share one comment, and this is from Bishop Ernest Richard. He says, raising girls was a lot more difficult than raising boys. Yes, for him. Mm-hmm. And he says, at least the girls would listen. The boys had their own agenda and they would come to talk to you after they messed up. And I have to agree with that. For those of you who have boys, how many of you can actually relate to this? And again, you know, my daughter, she was pretty easygoing. And what kind of backfired on me is that I taught her to be independent, and it backfired on me a little bit because she wouldn't come to me as much as I wanted her to come to me. So I was like, okay, where's my phone call? And, you know, so, you know, that was a learning curve for me, kind of, that it was great that I taught her to be independent, but then I had to backtrack and let her know that you can still come to me. But I did have to learn that when she comes to me, not to be judgmental, not to always want to have an opinion. Sometimes she may just want to bend my ear and go on about her way. Now that was difficult for me, but I've learned and we're doing really great with that now.
Okay. I mean, I love this, and I was sitting here thinking, you know, should I share this? But I think it's important that we share it, because I don't want to share my age, but I want to say that when I first got married, my mother took the leave and cleave literally, right? She's like, you have your husband now, you don't need me. That's what she said to me, right? She took that literally. Like, we're 19 years apart as well, right? So she took that literally, and that's what I mean by us being raised up in an environment where we're where information is being transferred to us and not quite understanding what it means, right? We have a closer relationship now. And I think that just comes with maturity, because there's some things that people don't understand or they don't know. I'm still learning myself. And so when I had that experience, that was crushing to me. I'm like, what? I don't have a mom? I'm just being, I'm being transparent. And and I think that just came from not completely understanding, but still wanting to honor what she was learning or understanding as far as the word of God was concerned, right? And so I'm so thankful that that we can talk and have these conversations now. And but that was one of the things that stuck out to me growing up, and it's a part of the schoolmaster and the experience I had as a guardian. Because a lot of time, do we think that we prepare our children to go out into the world, and as if we are believers, right? Are we preparing them for the kingdom and in the kingdom environment? Are we preparing them for that? And that's one of the things I thought about. Am I preparing now? I don't now, because that time has passed. I don't have the opportunity to put those things in them, because that time has passed. So we cannot go back and we cannot do it again. We can't do it again. As much as we want to, we can't. I'm trying to see. I don't even understand. I was looking in the notes in the messages. But
in the comments.
Yeah, comments. Yeah.
Yeah, so, I was gonna say, because he mentioned something about the boys, and Odella was talking about relating to the girls, and mine was actually the opposite experience.
Okay.
So my daughter is very independent and feisty, but she got that from me. But I think it's because also I'm taking into consideration that my mom became a single when I was in the 6th grade. My mother got divorced, so she was a single mom. So I think some of that independency came from her, and then I kind of just poured all of that into my daughter. So even though she was very open, and my mother always had us speak our mind, but always in a respectful way, you knew not to cross, mom, but you could still say what was on your mind. I kind of, that's the way I communicated with my children. But I think what happened was their personalities kicked in. So my daughter, being that independent young lady, she didn't always follow what, old school for me was, if my mother said, hey, we're allergic to cow's milk, so when you have your baby, don't do this, don't do that. And so I took that in consideration when I raised my children. But my daughter was like, well, the doctor said. So she was the challenge in that. I hear what you're saying, Mom, but she was so far removed. They're so independent. Like Nodella was saying, that it's like, okay, I hear you, but let me do this. So that's where I struggled, because I was like, hey, you got to take some of your history into this. And they're more, I'm going to figure this out for myself. And if I land where you are, then wonderful. But if I don't, you're going to have to deal with it. And that's the hard part, because as a grandparent, I'm like, I wouldn't have done it this way, but okay. That's the hard part. That's the hard part.
Yeah. This is so interesting, just hearing everyone's perspective, right? They're kind of similar. There's some little bit of differences, but just in the mindset of raising up our children. And sometimes, it's not easy letting go. But when you think about you, right? You think about you growing up and how you thought and how you felt. Well, I'm grown now, and you can't tell me what to do, right? I mean, who raise your hand? Who said that? Who thought it? Okay, so I'm just saying. So, but then you think about the experiences and the lessons and things that you learn, in that process, right? Because, and even as an adult, and even the prodigal son, his father gave him his inheritance early, and he squandered it. But he came back to himself, and he came back because he already knew. It's not that it wasn't placed in him. It's just that he chose to still be, like you said, Dr. Lisa said, he chose to do it his way. Well, I have this is mine, and I want it. And I don't care about how you say I need to do it, because I know what I want to do as an adult, because this is how I want to do it. And then when our when our children are adults, we have to trust that what we placed in them, we have that's a transition, not just for them, but for us, right? So when you think about, I have this child and I want to raise them up in a way that they're going to be successful, they're going to be able to go out into the world, and they're going to be able to take care of themselves, and then I'm going to be there to, if they want my advice, I can't just give it to them, right? You hope they want your advice, but if they want it, so how does it, okay, so have you ever had an experience where you had to, where you seen your children, adult children, do something, you like, you want to intervene, and you probably did, and then they rejected it, and how did that make you feel, as a parent? Have you ever
Like,
had an
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, Nadella.
I mean, there was many of those moments, but they became fewer over time as I recognized that, as to your point, is she is an adult, and even though I don't agree with her decisions that she make from time to time, those are her decisions that she chose to make. One thing about me is I'm a thinker. When I do a thing, know that I've sat on that thing like a chicken sitting on its egg. Even though at times I can be what appears to be impulsive, but know that I have given my action or my words some thought. And my daughter definitely is the same way. And so I've come to trust that she decided this is what she wants, even though I feel it's not the right thing or whatever. If she truly thought it through, which I know she did oftentimes, like me, that is something she did take after me. I said, okay, then she understands what comes with it. And I have to respect it. But I do, and I still hold my children in prayer today that they will, what I've taught them has been of help, but that they're also learning. And again, community, I can't say that enough, that community is very important. And so they all have their own community. Of course, not always the best advice, right? Because you're talking about your own peers. How much more can most of them know than you do, right? So it's just a matter of, and I think I saw somewhere through trial and error, they're like, okay, well, it worked for my boy over there, so let me give it a try and see if it works for me. And we just really kind of have to trust our teachings, and then also trust their level of maturity at that point in time as well.
Yeah, it was hard for me, but one thing that I learned to do, because I also learned that as an adult child with my mom in raising my children. So it's a 1-2 punch, because you're actually learning how to, raise your children, but at the same time, your mom is there too, because it is a community there. So you're like, Mom, okay, let me talk to her. So it's a layer. But what I learned in that process in both directions was to ask, because I might not agree with what my daughter is deciding, but this is your family and I can't run that. Same time, I have to tell my mom, okay, you can't tell me what to do with my child either. So we have to figure this out. So the question was always asked, are you asking for my opinion, or do you just need me to kind of listen and let me know when you're asking me, what do you think, Mom? So I look for those words so that I can understand what she needs me for in the conversation, because it might be that she's just sharing and she's not looking for me to tell her what to do. Which more often was the case with my daughter. So with my son, it's usually if he's having a conversation with me, the reason he called was because he wants Mom to pour in. But with my daughter, I had to learn that that's not actually, sometimes and we're not best friends, but I'm still your mama. But at the same time, I'm like, talk to me about what it is. And if you want my input, give me the signal so then we can have the conversation. Because if she's not ready for that kind of conversation, it's going to go left quick. And I had to learn that with not only her, but in communicating with my mom, whatever decisions that my children made or that I made with them. So that's one of the things that I incorporated, is to really ask the direct question. Are we just venting? Are we sharing? Or are you looking or seeking my advice on what you should do? So
That's good. That's
my
good.
relationship with my mom was a little unconventional compared to most teenage girls, but I never wanted to let her down, right? So regardless of what decision or what, I know, just really quick, one of our biggest battles in my teenage years, right, was about my car, because I just felt like you should just get in and drive. Like, I didn't know you had to actually do maintenance, and I never saw her do that. So just stuff like that, we would kind of bicker, but I never wanted to let her down. So when stuff would happen, I have run out of oil before. I would always test the limits of my gas.
You're not alone. Don't worry about it. You ain't alone.
She would always say, I tell you all the time, this, and I would listen to her. I would kind of go between what I wanted to do and kind of didn't want to let her down, though, kind of listen a little bit. So we would kind of go back and forth about little stuff like that, right? But not anything major, because I also have three other siblings that are somewhere between 20 and 19 years older than I am. And so to me, they paved the road for all the mistakes. I knew what happened if I had a kid. I knew what would happen if I moved out too early. I knew all the things. So I was like, nope, I don't want to go through that. Nope, I don't want to go through that. And so I just would kind of like make my own path as to the stuff that I wanted to do that was kind of a little bit nuts. As a teenager, you just do crazy stuff when you're a teenager. But she would always listen to me no matter what I would go through or what emotional situation I was having, the breakdown. She would let me get it all out. Then she would give me her. Then she'd say, now that's that. And I'm putting you in the hands of the Lord. Now y'all work that out. And she would just kind of let me go and figure it out. But I always kept in the forefront of my mind. I never wanted to let her down, because she was such a great example for me as to how to be as a woman.
Okay. And I did want to address, I seen a comment in the chats, and I've seen a few over there. I know Coach wanted to bring a few up, but I seen Poor Man's Dr. Phil mentioned that we're not talking about the fathers. Well, we're talking about raising up children, right? I'm not hearing where dad was involved with any assistance with your children, just moms and yourself. Well, because we don't have dads up here and we have an all-female panel, I think that's one reason why you're getting the aspect from a mother's perspective, not discounting the role of the father at all. So I wanted to say that because that's very important. The structure and order is very important. So it's not discounting the fathers, but these questions are pretty general questions based on the experience that we have with our children. And because it's an all-female panel, that's probably why you're not hearing the aspect of the male. Okay, go ahead, Dr. Lisa.
And I just wanted to add, and the dynamic might be, I know in my case that it is the role of the father. And like I said, my parents, were divorced in 6th grade. So my mother had the major influence. Now, my father was in my life, but it was a different relationship. And I learned different things from my mom. So it also depends on your relationship with your father. So that might be what little of what they're seeing here. At least I know in my situation, I wasn't necessarily a daddy's girl. I was with my mom and we were out of state. So the experience was very different because my dad wasn't there every day. I was in Georgia, he was in DC. So my mom was, raising us, so to speak. So that's some of what they're hearing too, is if the dad wasn't present, then that's part of it.
Okay, I'm not understanding the question that no, your father's in assisting not the children's. I'm not understanding that.
I think he's saying our fathers and not the children's father.
That's what
Oh,
I'm speaking
If I'm
of.
not
Yeah.
mistaken, that's what
okay.
it sounds possibly. He says,
Okay.
no, your father's.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And that's what I'm speaking
Yes.
specifically to my father. My relationship with my father was not your typical daddy's girl. That wasn't my experience. So that's where I'm coming from. And funny enough that he mentions not the children's father, because the children's father was a very opposite experience. So they were very hands-on. Everybody's in the same place. Yeah. So I grew up differently than my children did. And actually both of my children. My son grew up with both of his parents. My daughter did not. She had me, and with me, I had my parents until 6th grade. So all of those things go into place when you're raising your children. So my son is going to have a very different story and experience than my other child and my stepchildren as well, because he had both of his parents. So I had to learn that that's going to be a different experience for him as well. Like his story is going to be different just because the dynamic was different, which is it's all a good thing. They're good experiences on all ends.
So for me, my dad actually was there for me. I lived with my dad up until I got married. I was definitely a daddy's girl. My dad was hands-on, hence the tomboyish ways that I have. That's why I have 3 football teams. And I'm heavily into sports because he was into sports. But my dad did take pride in being in the home. And I just want to say this quickly is that for those of you who judge your parents very harshly for not doing a better job, and this is something that I have come to terms with for my own personal life with my children, we cannot teach you what we do not know. We need to cut our parents some slack. They cannot teach us what they don't know. Many of them did not know enough to seek out other resources, because also those resources were not there for them the way we have resources now. Our children and grandchildren and the great grandchildren, there are so many more resources now readily available that our parents, grandparents, and further back, they did not have. So they could only teach us what they knew. And so I give my parents much grace in that area, even though I didn't agree with some things. But again, being an adult now and having my own children and grandchildren, it made me realize they could not teach me what they did not know, and likewise with me. But my dad did the best that he could. When I got pregnant with my daughter, I thought he was going to lose it. He was quite the opposite. He was quite the opposite. He pulled me to the side. He says, okay, we're here. What are we going to do? He was so supportive of me. I was not allowed to drop out of school. He threatened me that if you drop out of school, this is what's going to happen to you. I was not allowed to drop out of school because I had my daughter as early as I did. He made sure not only that I graduated from school on time, but when I graduated, I told him I wanted to go to business school because I wanted to become an executive secretary. And he made sure that the money was there because there was an application fee. He made sure I had the money. I went to school, graduated. When I got married, even though he was against the marriage, he still walked me down the aisle. That's what my father did for me. He was not close to being perfect, but those are important things that matter to me and has really helped me in my life.
Now, and I am thankful for the questions, and for you sharing that, Miss Nodella. I want us to get back on track. Okay. I'm thankful. And I think that, the questions that we get in the chat are important. And, I want to make sure that they are involved in our conversation and discussion as well. So I want to try to get us back into the conversation that we were having pertaining to, you know, how we can, as when we have our children under our guardianship, how we can, you know, be that role model for them, you know, because that's important. Children are not only learning, and we're not even only putting things into them and teaching them, but they're learning from the example that we are setting before them as well. So, and they're adopting some of our behaviors, and so that's very, very, very important. And we need to help them as they are seeing and examining our behaviors. We need to help them to identify, you know, a lot of times the application of some of the things that we're doing, right? Because they don't have the full understanding of that, and they're not going to learn it completely from us, but they'll have an idea when they encounter it in their life. So we have talked so much about this, and there's so much more information that I would love to share, but I want to get to at least one or two questions because we have not even touched the question yet. So I want to get to at least one or two questions, and see if we can unpack what these questions are asking us. Okay. So I'm going to ask for the first question, if you don't mind, for that question to be put up. And I think this is helpful for us, the dialogue that we've had, helpful for us in answering some of these questions that have been posed. Okay. And I think some of them we've already, you know, touched on in our discussions. So what challenges have you faced in shifting from a parenting role to a mentoring role as your children have grown into adults? And we have touched on that a little, but can we just briefly give some more insight about that particular question as well?
Yeah, well, I would just quick. I think I touched on this a little earlier with some things that I do, but I just have to keep in mind that I'm not. This is not an opportunity to relive my life through my children. I had my time, and this is now theirs. And whatever role they need me to play is how I kind of show up for them in the mentoring space. So long as I keep that in mind, I don't overstep my boundaries. I do have moments, but I allow them to remind me that this is their life, and I am just pouring in as a mom of adult children, grandma, whatever. So yeah, just reminding myself that it's their life, it's not mine.
So for me, you know, when my daughter calls, and there's a certain tone she has when she calls, I can tell when she's just calling to chat, and then I can tell when something is going on. And for me, I lean into Holy Spirit because I want to make sure that I don't make the conversation about me. I also don't want to hijack the conversation full of advice and counsel and all that stuff that half of she probably is going to dismiss anyway. And so I've started leaning into Holy Spirit of what is she looking for? And if it is a time for me to give an answer, I do want to make sure that I give the best possible answer. And so I really just trust Holy Spirit in those particular moments. And to also Dr. Lisa's comment as well is just being whatever she needs for me to be. I am okay. I am finally okay with that.
For me, at this age, I have my bonus dad. My biological father passed away when I was very, very young. But my sister's father, who's always been a part of their life, kind of took me in under his wing as his kid. And our relationship has developed beautifully, especially as I've gotten older, probably since my late 20s. And we are very, very close to this day. You wouldn't tell. I'm one of the 7, right? However, it was some growing pains there. One, getting to know each other as an older adult or an adult actually, and then also having some respect and positionability as him being a father figure in my life, because I always said I was raised by all the neighborhood dads, right? So for me, understanding that his disposition is completely different than my mother's. Sometimes I wonder how in the world, but that they stay married so long. But he's very much so a military man, very much so authoritative, and I'm very sensitive. So it took a minute, right? And but we are at a place right now where he can tell me what I need to do. Very authoritative, like as if I am a minor. And I listen with a position of respect and honor. And then I take his information and I put it with a little bit of my common sense, and then I come up with a solution. And then once it's done, then of course we'll have another conversation again. But I understand that the relationship I have with him is very different. And I honor that, because that's a position of love. He didn't have to do that. He doesn't have to take that role. But again, it is very different. And I love the fact that I have that in my life, and I respect that in my life. And when he is very hands-on, like everything hung on my wall, he hung. I ain't wanted where he put it, but that's where he put it, and I got okay with it. It's more of a position of respect, but I do understand that as he's getting older, he's in his 80s, I'm in my 40s, that I listen with a position of honor and reverence for him, and really, really respect for him, and a deep, deep love. But I also understand that he is still my father, and I'm an adult woman, and that those options and things that I need to do within my life, I actually have to be responsible for. So I take his advice, but I kind of move in a way that I feel like the Most High, and with his advice, and go in that direction.
For me, I'm thinking about like as Nick D said, her adult children live with her. Like my adult son lives with me, right? And I tell him now that we roommates, and I would tell him, I will say things to him like, my son is legally blind, so I'm teaching him how to be more self-sufficient. He just graduated college. He is into music, right? So when he's in his room and doing some of his music, and then he be using them 4-letter words, I would like, listen, we're not doing that here. We are not going to do that here. And then he was like, Mom, was I cussing? I was like, boy, you be cussing so much, you don't even know you cussing. So it's like me having to set these boundaries, because he here in the house with me, right? And his music, he's a gifted, talented young man, right? And so now I'm learning to, like, make sure, boys are very private, young men, I'm not gonna say boys, young men are very private. And so privacy and respect is so important. I'm just watching him grow, and I'm learning that privacy and respect is so important. And he may have this learning difference, or this his vision may be low, but he is a young man, right? And so I had to learn to transition, from advising or instructing and telling him, even though we're in a house. So it's like this dynamic. It's like, how do I make sure that I do this in a way that helps prepare him for when he leaves here, and help him be respectful of why he living here. So it's like those dynamics that I have. So it's a little bit different. But it's interesting, to see, because he's not a young boy. He is a grown man. So it's interesting, to have to experience that dynamic and be the advisor. And he comes to me, he asks me questions often, and I'm thankful for that, right? Then other times he don't want my opinion. So and I'm okay with that as well. But I feel confident that I put some good stuff in him, so that when he leaves here, he'll be prepared. I'm still there. I want to make sure he's okay when he leaves here, because he has a vision. He's because of his sight. So, but it's not that I'm not going to continue to prepare him, because I am. That's my responsibility. And you know what? As an adult parent, and I think about that often. Is he going to be okay? Say if I have to leave here, is he going to be okay? Those are some of the things that I think about. And I think that we all should. And I think that when we are, when we have when we are gifted the opportunity to continue to advise our children and be in relationship with them, I think it's so important that we are mindful that we use our words very carefully and we ask God for instructions on what to say to them so that they can take that information with them, not emotionally, but give them sound information. I think that's important.
When patience is huge. So, just to add to that, Lisa, is that I had to learn patience, which I had to really learn because I was very impatient. But what I discovered in being patient, and it's unfortunate that we can't get those signs beforehand when we want to know whatever we poured in, did they hear me? Did they listen? But I do know that at this age, all of our children, we're a blended family, are 20 and up. Mm-hmm. And everyone's out of the home. We're empty nesters. But what I did learn was that I am noticing now that the things that I poured into my children, that my husband poured into the children, that we poured in collectively to the children are showing up. So yeah, for my daughter, she's 34, but I'm seeing it in how she raises her son. I'm seeing it how she manages her household. And I also love the fact, and this is the blessing, that they all love coming back home. So game night is always planned at our house, which to me speaks volumes for the fact that we didn't, raise them in a way where they feel like they had to break away completely, that they can be adults in our space and not feel threatened or controlled or anything like that. So, and it's actually a blessing. We fun about it. Like, y'all got homes. Why are y'all over here? But it's a blessing that they are comfortable with coming back home or invite us to go skating or whatever, like we're big kids. And I think that that's where you see the proof in the pudding. So it takes years, but it shows up. So patience is definitely one of those things.
That's good. That's good. I am truly enjoying this conversation. There's so much more that I'm thinking as I'm listening, but I want us to go on to question number 2. And I know I'm confident that we have touched on this as well. So how can we effectively communicate our support to our children without coming across as controlling or direct, or giving them directives?
Ask questions is my short answer. Is ask questions. Okay. Ask where we with this, what type of conversation this is. Are you looking for some guidance? Are you just looking for a sounding board? Whatever it is, that's what's helped me guide my conversations with my daughter without her feeling like I'm telling her what to do. So she's taking that energy out of the conversation when I just ask, are you just, want me to listen, or are you asking for my opinion? And then she takes the lead on, yes, Mom, what would you do? That's how I've been able to kind of take that out of it so it's not so controlling.
Okay, so I have another question on top of this. Have you found yourself trying to tell them what to do sometime? Have you ever had the control? I'm just asking.
Every now and then, because I'm human. But I put laughter into it. So I was like, look, I'm not trying to tell you what to do. But and we have developed a relationship now where my children hear what I say. And I say, but I know you are grown and you have the ultimate decision on what you do. So I release it. After I try to take it a little bit, I release it, let it go so they know. So it's much better, much better.
What to this question is, how can we effectively communicate our support? My daughter and I have reached this place to where when she does call, again, I listen to the words when she first starts talking. That typically is a telltale sign for me as to whether she's soliciting advice or if she's just calling to air out or whatever the case may be. So I try to be attentive and sensitive to when she starts talking, or if she just comes straight out the gate, Ma, I got a question for you. Then I know she's looking for input. But even with that, sometimes that's kind of a catch-22 because it could be a rhetorical question and not an actual, I want your advice. And so I just really try to, again, excuse me, listen carefully, because I am very opinionated. I am one of those mothers at one point where whether she wanted my advice or not, she got it. You're taking up my time, so you're going to get it. And when I started realizing she wasn't even taking what I was saying and doing anything with it, that falls along the line of casting your pearls before swine. Not that she's a swine, obviously, but we're talking about taking something that which is valuable and giving it to someone who is not going to value it. And so I just started pulling back. And so there were times when she would call, she would say whatever, and when she would stop talking, and I'm like, okay. I said, well, I'll keep you in prayer. And I knew she wanted me to give more than that. But at the same time, I knew she wasn't going to like my response. So instead of getting my feelings hurt, getting up in my feelings, there was times when I would not give her that feedback because I'm like, why am I going to keep giving you stuff that I know works and you're not going to do anything with it? Why? Because it's not what she wanted to hear. And I don't sugarcoat stuff. Y'all know I don't sugarcoat. I don't do well with sugarcoating. And so I just also learned that in those moments when I know she's not going to take to heart what I'm sharing, I'm not going to waste my time. So that way I'm not going to get upset. And so I do pretty good with that.
For me as a mentor, for my cousins, can you hear me? Okay. For my cousins or nieces and nephews that I have in my family, I tend to try to stay open and positive. However, I level with them and I talk to them very straight, sometimes in their language, sometimes in other language. But whatever it takes to be effective in my communication. But because I stay open and positive, I do leave that road of communication open. And so I will also get follow-up phone calls, additional questions when I'm in that, have that mentor hat on. So I just try to stay positive, again, keep the communication open, but level with them and tell them exactly what it is, the answer to their question, sometimes roughly, a lot of times I have to use their language, even their own slang, but being able to communicate with them on their level, but giving them real world experiences.
Okay. Great. I'm just loving all of the comments. And I wanted to address the question that was asked in the chat, ladies. So the question is, can you help with how to communicate with children you did not raise and are now grown, and you both are wanting a relationship with each other now?
Oh, great question. I'll take a stab at it. I think I'm actually in the midst of that, being a blended family, and it wasn't always easy. I will share that I try to make myself available. I think I entered into the situation with communicating with them thinking that they were wanting to hear what I had to say, when that wasn't actually the case. You have to build that relationship and that trust. So the way I started to communicate with them is to try to just be there for them. I can offer my availability, that I'm here if you need to talk, but kind of let them move in their own space with that. Because if you force it, it becomes difficult. So I would just say to stay open and remind them that you are there for the conversation when they're ready for it. And they'll tend to open up. I think that part of what I've been training myself to do over the years is, even when my children brought their friends over, I put them in conversations they probably weren't really looking for it, but I opened it up to see who would bite. And a lot of times we got into conversation because the trust was there. And I do that with my stepchildren as well. It's not always that they're ready. So I try not to take it personally if they're just not ready to have the conversation. It just takes time. I don't know if that helps, but
I would add to this particular question is the thing that I found that is so powerful is that you both wanting the relationship with each other now. So I think that is the binding
and
aspect.
that's hard to tell though. Like you think they want it because you all are getting along together, but I don't know sometimes. I don't know if they really want and what level of conversation they want with me. So I have to just be open that whatever they give me is what they want. If it doesn't go any deeper, don't take it personally, and let it graduate. And it could take years. But I'm in that space where I'm learning that, but it wasn't easy. Because you want to be there. You're the mom, you're the stepmom, but you have to let it kind of flow, and stay open.
But that is, that's good because, the thought of you not really truly knowing what they want, they may be expressing that, but they don't, sometimes, they may not know what they want. But I think that in that particular aspect, as you get to know each other, you're growing, you're listening, and asking questions is so key in this particular dynamic. So I think that's important.
So example real quick is your stepdaughter's going to school, and I know, have some information on maybe what to think about, that kind of thing. I offer it. I pay attention to how it's responded to. If there's more communication, then I continue it. But then I stop because you don't want to do too much, because you don't want them to feel like you're just kind of intruding. And then, sometimes they come back and they have additional questions because of what you gave them before. And then other times you just kind of let it flow. But that's an example of where I had to kind of manage how far do I go with this conversation and trust that they even want any information from me. Even if I have really good information and I want to help, I couldn't do it on my energy. I had to do it off of theirs. So I piecemealed it as they were comfortable with it. And as your relationship grows, they'll feel free to ask more.
Yeah, that's good. Anyone else
Lisa,
want to take
I just want to share. Yeah, I just want to share is prayer would be very instrumental in a relationship like this. If it's instrumental in our relationships with our biological and stepchildren, adoptive children, surrogate children, grandchildren, godchildren, it's definitely more instrumental in this case as well, because Holy Spirit can better help you navigate on how to, even to what Dr. Lisa was saying. He can help you to see what their mindset is. Even sometimes children don't know. He can definitely help you to even kind of sift through maybe the unclarity or the confusion, because we're talking about a new relationship. And it's no different as, two people who wants to become partners. It's like, okay, we're in a discovery phase. We're in the getting to know each other. We're not sure what questions to ask, what questions not to ask. And then the expectation. Holy Spirit definitely would be the key in this through prayer. Definitely.
I agree with Nodella. Being a bonus kid myself, I do know that leading with love in all those aspects of the relationship was the foundation for my relationship with my dad. I was apprehensive as to how close I should get, what I should share, all those things. And the one thing that he tells me continuously, no matter what, is, and sometimes just out of the blue on a Wednesday at 2:00, he'll just call me to tell me he loves me. And so we keep that at the foundation of our relationship, and it has developed tremendously. As an adult, I also understand that I'm not perfect and he isn't perfect, and I can't expect anything from him that I haven't communicated, and vice versa. We're very open when it comes to that. But at the end of the day, I do know this is a man who chose to love me. And because we're in that space now as adults, regardless of what happens, sometimes I think, oh, let me sit back a little bit because I'm not the biological kid. And there's five left now. There were 6 other biological children, but and I know that I'm loved, but he makes an extra effort to say and to make sure that I understand that no matter what, whether we talk, whether we don't, that I am loved just as equally as they are. So for me, the foundation of that is love and keeping those lines of communication open.
You're on mute, Lisa.
I would like to put up some of Empowering Perspectives comments to this question from Ms. Cassandra Jones. Thank you so much for asking this question. Because that's what this community is all about, us coming together and learning together. So Empower Perspective, the gateway to strong connection with children in a blended family is the biological parent. They somewhat give the child permission to have a deeper relationship with the other party. The other one, however, there are 2 biological parents, and sometimes we don't know the conversation of the other parents, nor are we responsible for it. Be patient. Be consistent, be caring, and be available.
I love all of that.
Very good advice. Very good advice. Very good. And thank you so much, Ms. Cassandra, for the question. And we're here. I'm thoroughly enjoying this conversation, and I really do appreciate, us coming together. I think we have time for one more question. You are so welcome, Ms. Cassandra. Thank you for joining us. Thank you. We want to have time for one more question, and then we're going to go ahead.
Can I add one real quick, Lisa? Something we did when the children were younger, that maybe I don't know the age of the children, but what we did was we had one of the children came to us, my husband and myself, and said, can we have a family meeting? Because there were feelings going on, people were, and they are getting outside influence. So I like that he mentioned that they're 2 parents. So, and we can't control that influence. So we had family meeting. Now, I'm not saying that it always went well, but there was an opportunity for them to say, and we had to be open to it. So it's like, absolutely, let's sit around in the living room and let's talk about what I'm doing wrong, or not doing that you don't understand. Because I know for me, I was a yeller or I was more demanding, and they're coming from different households. So what they're used to is not maybe where they are. But having a family meeting, I know it seems cheesy and
no, it's not. It's
like
good.
Brady Bunch kind of thing, but it was actually it gave them leadership in this situation. Like, I got something to say. Can I sit y'all down as parents and say, this is what we're feeling? So it was different, but I loved it. That's just right up my lane. They didn't know that, but I was like, let's do it. So that's something that you can try, even as adults. I think that can be done. So
that is a great tool. And guess what? You're not the only one who did that. I did that as well with mine. But that's when I be getting them extra questions and stuff, and the shock factor. My daughter, she likes to do that stuff to me. Yeah, but I think it's important. Those are the parts of the conversation that they need to. It helps them with learning how to communicate when they leave home, right? I can say this and just add that our children being able to be effectively communicate and express the things that they are thinking or feeling are so important for them, because if they can't effectively express that, then there's some frustration that sets in. So them being able to share and get out the things that they have going on in the inside is very important, and be able to effectively communicate that. So that is wonderful. I'm so glad that you brought that up and mentioned that. And it's something that we can do still, like you said, as a family. Even as if it's just you and your mate together. Somebody can come sit down. Let's have a meeting of the mind. Let's sit down. Let's reconnect. Let's talk about what's going on. What are your thoughts about what's going on? How can we make this better? I think all those moments are important. Okay, so yes, this is what I have to decide to do. Have a group family meeting. Great. That's good. That's good. That's good. That's good. I'm so happy that something that is being said here can give you some ideals as to what you can do moving forward. An action step to help us improve what we want for our life. I think that to me is phenomenal. So we appreciate you again, Miss Cassandra, and thankful that we can say something that can help you and give you some insight or maybe something to consider for your family. So thank you so much. We got time for just one more question, you guys. Okay, and then we're going to do our final thoughts. So this question: in what ways can we encourage our adult children to seek our advice while also respecting their independence? So this dynamic is interesting, and I think we did touch on this as well a little bit.
Yeah, and I just keep the lines of communication open. Go ahead, Nodella. Mm-hmm. You go. Oh. No, I just keep the lines of communication. I think we did talk about it a little bit. I just keep the lines of communication open. And my daughter, which was, I said, that's my firecracker. She was, because she was so independent and probably me to the 10th, 20th power. So we actually just continue to talk. We check in on each other. And if it's something going on, even if it's something outside of me that she's going through with a friend or whatever, my phone, you got my number, you call me anytime. And when I hear Ma, that's when I know that I need to put on my listening ears and just tell me all about it. And I go from there. So I just say, keep the lines of communication open, difficult, easy, fun. Or I invite them to come over. If there's something on their mind going on, I say, well, hey, come on over and let's talk about it. And that goes for even as of days ago, because the world is going through all kinds of things. And I just always keep my door open. And my husband and I are there to have the conversation, whatever it may be. So,
anyway, Miss Adrienne or Miss
I'm pretty much in the same space with Dr. Lisa, but it starts with, where is your relationship anyway? If you don't have a good relationship, or if your relationship is strenuous, then it's going to be difficult to say, hey, you can call me or whatever. And again, that's how it was with my daughter and I, years ago, where because I wanted her to live her life, not live out my life, but there were certain expectations that I have of her because of the way I lived my life. And so our relationship was strenuous and she would not reach out to me. It was only that when I backed up and say, you know what, as much as I want this for her, if this is not what she wants, me wanting it for her and wishing it, it's not going to happen, because she's still going to make her decision. When I started backing up, and then when she will call, even though I didn't like the conversation we was having based on whatever it was she wanted to talk about, I showed her respect. I didn't, come in on her, like a swarm of bees and, no. I had to respect it, even though I didn't like it. And I believe that's when she started building up the confidence as well as the trust that, yeah, I know my mama's not going to like this, but she know I would never steer her wrong. Whenever I've given her advice, it was always my best intentions. And so I started building up that trust with her. And so now sometimes, and I know she's not watching because I don't see her up here, but if she was to hear this, sometimes she'll call me, and I think you said it also, Lisa Keys. I'm like, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. I'm like, why are you bringing this to me? Because if I respond, you're not going to like my response. But again, out of respect, I will listen, because at least she's feeling confident enough to come to me. And I treasure that so much, that she could go to her peers who could probably give her the most outlandish advice that I would really not like. So we have to take the good with the bad, right? We have to take the good with the bad. And so as I started pulling back and being more of a listening ear and things of that nature, she comes to me more and more. And like I said, even sometimes conversations that I particularly don't want to hear, I take it all in stride. And I'm like, okay, she done gave me something else to pray for. And so she is very comfortable with seeking out advice from me because I know she has plenty of friends, and these ladies are pretty good friends, and some of them are guys. But when she decides to come to me, listen, y'all can't tell me nothing because I know she do have other options. I know that I have sisters as well. But when she says, I'm going to my mama, yeah, that's something. That's something. So it just continues to happen organically, which is what I love. I don't have to tell her anymore. You know where I'm at, you know where to find me. And so because she knows it's a standing open door, she just comes to me. And for that, I'm grateful.
I think as an adult child, one of the most important things for me when it came to dealing with just being an adult and having to talk to my mom about whatever was going on in life, right, is that we maintain the communication lines always remained open. She always maintained a position and a mindset of positivity and was consistently encouraging. And the one thing I know of nothing else is that she consistently kept me in prayer. And so I think those are the 4 pillars of keeping a good communication line open with your adult children, is maintaining those 4 at all times. And I know that has to be difficult as a parent because just working with other adults, you're like, what in the world? But, in order to maintain that communication line, and you don't want to have a breakdown of communication, those are the 4 pillars that you need maintaining that relationship.
Great, ladies. This has been a great conversation, and I wanted to share my thoughts on this question. If you could put the question back up, I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. In what ways can we encourage our adult children to seek our advice while also respecting their independence? And I think that, when I think about, for me, we all have used our children, our experience for this particular question to come to some terms with it. I think encouraging them and sharing with them, a lot of times for me, what I would give my daughter, since she likes the shock factor, and she does, call herself a Christian, and I'm not trying to be facetious, right? Because she be straddling the fence sometimes. So I'm not trying to be facetious. But when I do share stuff with her, I share with her what the Word of God says, right? Because that's my core foundational belief. And when I'm encouraging her, and I want to have, want her to know that it's okay to come to me and have these conversations. The same with my son, I hear them in their conversations that they may be having with their peers, and I'm sometimes I listen to my son. He like, and I'm so proud the way that he responds, right? And then I'll say to him later, I'm like, I like when you say, he told my mom, "Are you listening to my conversation?" I was like, "You was loud, I heard you." So I'm telling you, I'm proud of how you handled the question, right? And so I'm so thankful that I can, also make sure that I am, encouraging them that it's okay to come talk to me. This is a safe place, but you know what I'm going to give you all the time. You know what I'm going to give you. I'm going to be practical, right? And it may not be in the scripture, but it's going to be practical. It's going to be something along those principles. And so they know that when they come to me, and I know that when they come to me, it's because they sincerely need my advice, and they know that I'm there to help guide them. And so, like you said, it's good that they come to you, You know, they may have come to talk to somebody else like, no, that's not good. And they may have talked to a few other people. They're like, okay, I know who I need to go talk to, because I know that they're going to give me, you know, sound advice. And so that's important, and that's good, you know. But just the dynamics of this all, you know, in transitioning from, you know, raising up your children to instructing them and then listening to them as they're independent, you know, sometimes there's some stuff going on the inside, but you still have to remember this is the same transition you had to go through as well. So I think that's good. So anyway, we're going to do our final thoughts. If any and I'm going to let you guys express anything that you may have thought about this particular conversation, and we can almost do a part 2. There's still so much information. There's so much information that we can do that we, you know, left on the table. We can almost do a part 2, and we very well may do that. Part 2, okay. Part 2, I'm getting a consensus of part 2, okay. So, so we're going to do our final thoughts then for this conversation. And if we could start with Miss Adrian, and then we can do Miss Nodella, Miss Lisa, and then I'll finish us off, okay? Thank you, guys.
Thank you for this conversation. I was a little apprehensive. It's a little difficult when you don't have children and people want you to stay in your lane, but I appreciate having the openness of community, to have this conversation. And at the end of the day, I am an adult child, right? I do know that a lot of people struggle in this area, and I haven't had those particular struggles, but I do understand it. There are struggles there. And so I'm very thankful to have had the knowledge and the teaching from my parents that I have had, and I honor that. And I encourage others to honor that. As a mentor, I try to take those lessons that I've learned from my parents and having those relationship positive and negative experiences when I am asked to step into the role and wear the hat of a mentor. But again, I try to give them sound advice and make sure that I say a small prayer to the Most High before I speak. And I want to make sure that the words and the encouragement that I give to anyone will help them along their journey. And for all the parents out there, I remain prayerful for you, because I'm sure this is a difficult transition to go from having a smaller child to an adult child, because I am an adult child. But I thank you all for the conversation. I love this community. And until next time, I love you with the love of Christ.
This truly was a great conversation, even though all my children are grown. But as I reflect back on the growing pains of being, first and foremost, a very young mother, we must remember that, as I said earlier, that as long as both of you are breathing, you will always be in a space, in a place of parenting, no matter what. And those are one of the great benefits of being a parent, especially if you have a good relationship. The other thing that I want us to also keep in mind is that, remember, you both are still growing as long as you are on this earth. And so things that we did not know from day one, things that we didn't know 5 years in, things we didn't know 15 years in, things we didn't know 25 years in. We are all growing together. And that's very important, that we both are growing, because if as a parent you become stagnated, but your child continues to grow, then that kind of limits your ability to be a more effective support to them. So as parents, make sure that you are also growing with your child or children. When I say grow, I'm not talking about just as a parent. I'm talking about as a human being in general. Growing can be anything, just, maybe learning how to even share your thoughts without feeling like that you're infringing upon their right as an adult. learning can just simply read a 5-minute article on something that you did not know. And that's something that I ascribe myself to. And so when my daughter calls, sometimes I'll zap her with some new information. And she's like, where you get that from? And, and I love that interaction between us also. So make sure that you as an adult is always in the space of learning, but also encourage your child and your children to always be in a place of learning. And again, I'm talking about something that you did not know.
I have absolutely, as well as everybody has said, loved this conversation. It was actually served as a reminder to me of my role. And I can say all of these years later that I love the role and the transition that I'm in now as parenting. So this was a great conversation because it actually reminds us that there's a beginning, there's a middle, and the end is a long ways away, even at my age, that we still have a role to play. It may shift, it may change. That's why I value this conversation. And being someone who's in a blended family, it's kind of reminded me to continue to work on my role as a parent, as a grandparent, of adult children, because now you're having to balance all of those at the same time once the family starts to grow. And I will say that the blessings are definitely on the other side of this. When you pour in, you're not always sure what it's going to look like, but it's a wonderful feeling to watch it grow and watch your children grow their families and learn to transition and be able to share the things that you've learned along the way. And this experience, even today, would be one of those reminders of how we continue to have those conversations, like family meetings we brought up, but even now reminded me that we're well overdue for just a family meeting to check in, see how everybody's doing, and make sure that those lines of communication are still open in those challenging areas, that we continue to work on those. So lead with love, definitely in any role that you play with your children. But I'm here for the rest of the experience because I'm loving what I'm seeing in the growth and the transition, no matter how hard it's been. So thank you for this opportunity. I'm ready for part 2.
I am ready for part 2 as well. And I was thinking maybe we need to have the Hearts of Men on with us. We'll see. We'll have that conversation later. But I have truly enjoyed this. And I am so thankful to be learning and understanding that there's a process in us being kingdom citizens. And there's an order that God has already established and put in place for us. And when I think about being ambassadors, right? And the goal of the ambassador and the role of the ambassador, and also to raise up the children that the schoolmaster is raising so that they can be an ambassador for Christ as well. It's like it's all coming together. The puzzle pieces are coming together. And I'm so thankful to be able to have this conversation and learning and growing in these moments, because there's so much more that God wants to teach us. When we begin to seek, we will find. He will give us insight. The Holy Spirit will begin to bring things back to our remembrance, and we can continue to grow and strengthen our community in as we become more, as we learn more about becoming a kingdom citizen, if that makes sense to you guys. So thank you again for the opportunity to come together and to have the conversation. And I look forward to part 2 of this conversation as well. So at this particular time, we are going to go ahead and we are going to say our goodbyes, and we will see you the next time. Please join the Hearts of Women every 3rd Saturday. We cannot wait to have the conversation with you again. Until then, we'll talk to you guys.